We now move to topical questions. Question number 1, John Mason.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what support will be provided to staff at the Freshlink factory in Shettleston who have been told that the factory is closing and moving its business to England.
Minister, Fergus Ewing.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government will do everything it can through its Partnership Action for Continuing Employment PACE initiative to help those employees of Freshlink who are facing redundancy. Through providing a tailored package of skills development and employability support, PACE aims to minimise the time people affected by redundancy are out of work. Delivery of PACE support is led by Skills Development Scotland, with partners including the DWP and Glasgow City Council. Presiding Officer, I will be visiting the Freshlink factory on Friday this week with Councillor McAveety and PACE officials. We will meet with employee representatives and the management of the company to discuss the tailored package of support for employees which our local Glasgow PACE team is standing ready to deliver.
John Mason.
I thank the Minister very much for that reply and the fact that both the Government and the Council are putting so much effort into helping the employees now the decision has been made. Can the Minister confirm that considerable assistance was offered to Freshlink by Glasgow City Council, the Scottish Government, Scottish Enterprise and Clyde Gateway, amongst others, but the company has shown little enthusiasm to find a solution which would have let it continue in Glasgow?
Minister.
Well, yes, I can, and John Mason is aware of that because he and Drew Smith and Margaret Curran, Councillor McAveety, Bailey Liz Cameron and I all worked on the stakeholder group, which met together on 4 separate occasions and where the First Minister himself also chaired the last of the stakeholder meetings to take place. I can advise members that the offer made to the company to retain in Scotland its presence was at the maximum allowable level for regional selective assistance, the maximum allowable level. I think that was really accepted by all stakeholders from differing parties that worked together to try to persuade the company to stay in Glasgow. Unfortunately, those efforts were unsuccessful, but it was not because of the offer. The offer was at the absolute maximum. And of course, Presiding Officer, to answer the other matter that John Mason raises, we do recognise that Clyde Gateway does excellent work, and that work will most certainly continue with our support.
John Mason.
Well, I thank the member for the Minister for his reassurance, especially about the continuing support for Clyde Gateway, who have been one of the players. I just wonder if the Minister, when he meets on Friday, will be discussing with the management how the workforce will be dealt with over the coming weeks, because already I have had 1 or 2 constituents coming to me very uncertain about when their end date will be, therefore not able to apply for another job in case they would lose their redundancy payment. So I would hope if the Minister could reassure us that that would be on his agenda.
Minister.
It certainly will. The plant is expected to completely close in early 2013. Both myself and Councillor Frank McAveety, with whom, as John Mason knows, I work very closely in co-chairing the group, will be present. We will most certainly be having a dialogue with the management of the company to ensure that their full support is provided in respect of the PACE activities. And that full support, that attitude of full cooperation, is extremely important in ensuring that the PACE activity is as efficacious as is possible. So that is one of the several reasons why I shall be visiting the factory and speaking to the management on Friday of this week.
Drew Smith.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I thank the Minister for the engagement and discussions that he's had with me and others on the issue of the Freshlinks closure or projected closure over many months. The Minister will be aware that a meeting attended by the First Minister held only a few days before the announcement of closure did talk about a new option being on the table, and particularly the prospect of a renewable energy project. Can he confirm when the Scottish Government were informed that the company had taken the decision to close the factory, and indicate whether he felt that the ABP Foods took seriously the offers that were being made to them? And secondly, Presiding Officer, can he confirm whether any of the resource which was identified to support ABP Foods to stay in Shettleston could now be used to support the workers in the community which ABP are leaving behind?
Minister.
Well, the decision of the company that they were not prepared to accept the package offered was made in the course of last week. I will have to check precisely when, as I don't wish inadvertently to mislead Drew Smith. I think it is reasonable to say, however, that the company were fully aware of all elements of the package, including the offer which would have involved a renewable energy scheme. So I think they did understand the nature of the offer. They were interested in it, but as Drew Smith knows, their argument was that the perceived gap between the cost of remaining in Glasgow and providing new premises and the perceived costs that they would incur by switching production to Yorkshire was too large. I think everybody accepts in the task force that those were the reasons they gave, and those were the reasons that they continued to give. So I think to answer absolutely the second question that Drew Smith asked me, the company was fully aware of the nature of the offer which, of course, Glasgow City Council contributed to and worked extremely closely. And I should, of course, record my thanks to every single member of the task force, including those from the City Council and the workforce representatives, many of whom themselves, Presiding Officer, will sadly lose their jobs. But every effort now will be pursued to ensure that those who are made redundant, that's the Glasgow workforce, will find other jobs. And I'm comforted by the fact that of those that receive PACE support, I understand that nearly 3/4 who receive PACE support go on to find alternative employment. That's a very high figure. It's a good figure, and I think it is a recognition of the quality of the components of the support that the PACE team provides. So their full contribution, with all the stakeholders that work with them, will be devoted to securing the objective that every effort will be made to help those who are losing their jobs to find other jobs. And we do have some time within which to do that. So I can assure Drew Smith and all other members that there will be every element of urgency pursued toward that objective.
Question number 2, George Adam.
To ask the Scottish Government what steps it's taking to resolve any backlog in the student loan applications.
Cabinet Secretary Michael Russell.
Presiding Officer, so far the Student Awards Agency for Scotland has processed approximately 150,000 applications, including the 105,405 students who applied by the guarantee date. That is 99% of applications received so far. Applications are continuing to arrive from students seeking support for year 2012-13. Indeed, the Students' Awards Agency anticipates something in the region of a further 7,000 late applications between now and March 2013. As of this morning, 1,272 late applications were waiting to be processed, with more applications arriving at the rate of around 50 a day. In order to clear outstanding applications, the Student Awards Agency for Scotland is utilising overtime working, the contact centre opening hours have extended, and staff have been redeployed to help with the effort.
George Adam.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary for his answer. Can the Cabinet Secretary confirm that this is the last year of the current system for applying for student support and that any lessons from this year will be learned in time for the new system going live next year?
Cabinet Secretary.
I have indeed announced a new and simplified system, Presiding Officer, of student support. I announced it on the 22nd of August this year. It will come into effect from next year. This is going to replace what are literally dozens of confusing combinations of bursary and loan currently available, with just 4 levels of award. It will also, by providing non-income assessed support, remove the need for approximately 20,000 students to provide evidence of household income. Meanwhile, David Wallace, the Deputy Chief Executive of the Student Loans Company, will, at the invitation of SAS, work with them to review the processes for dealing with late and incomplete applications, with a view to further improving these improvements.
George Adam.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. The Cabinet Secretary has outlined some of the main issues that have contributed to the backlog. Does he agree with me that the key step will be to continue to encourage students to apply by the guaranteed date in order to ensure that their application is processed before their course begins?
Cabinet Secretary.
That is absolutely crucial. Mr Adam is right to identify the guarantee date and late applications as key issues. The introduction of the guarantee date, ensuring students' applications are processed before their course begins, is a significant improvement, More than 100,000 students have taken advantage of this innovation. Indeed, as I said earlier, the number is 105,405 students. It's however also true that in the month of September, a matter of weeks before courses start, new applications were still arriving at SAS at the rate of 600 to 700 a day. The guarantee date has been in operation for 3 years. We give it wide publicity on the SAS website, in documentation, and in the 300-plus visits that the Students' Awards Agency undertakes to schools and other institutions. We will go on encouraging students to get their applications in good time, and of course I'm always happy to look at what more we can do to ensure that that takes place.
Hugh Henry.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The issue is not just about late applications. The Cabinet Secretaries had correspondence from one of my constituents, Mr Nick Horton, whose son has been threatened with a review of his place in a course at Reading University. Mr Horton says his son is not a late applicant, but still, as of the 1st of November, did not have his problems resolved. But also, you have to face sometimes difficulties that arise, such as those of Nicola Mabel from Jedburgh, who was only offered a place at Heriot-Watt University on the 5th of September, and because of delays, she's now had to give up her place in the course. She's a single parent. She couldn't afford the uncertainty. That's the human cost of these problems, which have been known about for months.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, Presiding Officer, let me deal with that, which wasn't a question, but let me deal with the facts that Mr Henry has raised. First of all, every university and college has discretionary and emergency funds, and those should be accessed by any student who has a late application or who has difficulty. Secondly, when individual members in this chamber write to me about individuals, and I don't recall those issues coming from Mr Henry, but when any member writes to me about those, then I make sure that immediate action is taken upon them. But the issue is always the complete application form being received in time, or if it comes late, then it is complete. And of course, in the case of complex applications, sometimes further information is required. But the two key things are discretionary and emergency funds exist. And when individual members, or indeed individuals, raise issues with me, and of course the rise of social media has meant that happens more often, then those things are attended to, and attended to quickly. There will always be what I will require of the students of the awards agency. It will always be what they do.
Will Smith.
Cabinet Secretary, this is not the first time at this time of year where we've had problems with SAS. Would it be the Government's intention to request that at this particular juncture it would be possible to put on additional resources in terms of the phone call system so that there are fewer problems arising in the first place?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I think that's a helpful intervention from Liz Smith. I am determined to make sure that they have the maximum resource available to them within the present restrictions that we have throughout the public sector. I did say in my first answer to George Adam that we are now utilising overtime working, and the contact centre opening hours have been extended. But in addition, the review that SAS has requested from David Wallace from the Student Loan Company will look at issues exactly like that. It is important to recognise that there have been previous difficulties. I would draw attention to the worst difficulty that existed in the matter of student loans, which was in 1997. In October 1997, there was a backlog of 40,000 applications, and at that stage, of course, the then Education Minister, one Brian Wilson, had to order a review.
Neil Findlay.
Surely students shouldn't have to contact the Cabinet Secretary in order to get their award processed. And is he saying that the message is that the blame for this debacle lies with the students themselves?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, as ever with Mr Findlay, he misrepresents what he has said. I don't know whether he doesn't hear it clearly or whether he simply wants to misrepresent it. The message is that timely application is the most important thing. The message is that the guarantee date is something that helps students. The message is that the Student Awards Agency this year has actually dealt with a record number of applications in a record amount of time. But where there are difficulties, then I am absolutely insistent that those difficulties are dealt with, and where systems can be improved, then they should be improved. That's the message. I hope that was heard clearly, and I hope it will be repeated by Mr Findlay now to his constituents.
Liam MacArthur.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I I think I would certainly acknowledge the steps that have been taken by SAS in recent days to deal with this backlog, although the letter from the Cabinet Secretary to the convener of the Education Committee does appear to lay the blame at the door of students in terms of late, incomplete and ineligible applications. He mentions the point about access to discretionary emergency funds. One of the points being made by NUS was that the problems in relation to SAS didn't allow them to access those funds. The cases have been identified by Hugh Henry would appear to underscore the call from NUS Scotland for an inquiry into this issue. Can he confirm that he is happy to take forward that inquiry, or indeed whether the support of David Wallace in this area constitutes an inquiry?
Cabinet Secretary.
The support of David Wallace in this area constitutes a review in order that we get this the system working better. That's what we need to do. I'm very pleased that Robin Parker of the NUS has indicated that he thinks the steps being taken are good steps. They are good steps. But I'm not blaming anybody. What I'm trying to make sure is that the system works as well as it possibly can, and I'm trying to show the flexibility of this government, that when matters are drawn to its attention and when people need help, they get help from this government. I would have thought that was something that the whole of Scotland would welcome. Well, the whole of Scotland, as usual, except the Labour benches.
Question number 3, Mary Scanlon.
To ask the Scottish Executive Government whether the uptake for flu vaccinations in 2012 is on target.
Minister, Michael Matheson.
The Scottish Government has set a target of 75% for the final uptake rate for over 65s and under 65s at risk for influenza vaccination. We do not set interim targets for uptake. As in previous years, the Scottish Government is running an extensive public information campaign throughout the flu season. The rates of uptake are closely monitored by Health Protection Scotland.
I thank the Minister for his reply. This year, the annual flu campaign was launched at Jags for Jags, Partick Thistle, by the Health Secretary one day earlier than last year's campaign, yet the vaccine uptake to week 43 is currently 8% lower for over 65s and 5% lower for under 65 and at-risk groups. But I find even more concerning that NHS staff uptake rate was 30% for last year. And I do appreciate there's a target for 50% for this year. But can I ask, Presiding Officer, what is being done to encourage more NHS staff to take the vaccine, and what work is being done to more fully understand why we have such a low uptake generally?
Minister.
Can I thank Mary Scanlon for her question? And I do recall the launch of it at Firhill. As a Partick Thistle fan, I was very jealous that the Cabinet Secretary got the opportunity to launch that particular campaign there with some of the players. Can I say that over the last 3 years, uptake of the influenza vaccination in Scotland has been increasing. And last year it was over the 75% level for those who were over 65. So we have been making good progress in increasing the number of people who are making use of the vaccination programme. The member made a specific point around the uptake amongst NHS staff, and I do agree there is a need to make sure that more of our health workers who are working with patients that they make access of the vaccination programme. What we have asked all of our boards to do is to ensure that they have a member of nursing staff within each hospital who will be responsible as the champion amongst their colleagues in order to encourage them to make use of the vaccination programme. We've also hosted a couple of events for these particular local champions to assist them in the work that they can take forward within their own local area. And also we'll review that in March to see what has worked and what we can do further in the coming year to increase the number of healthcare workers who are actually making use of the vaccination programme.
Ms Scanlon.
Can I just ask finally, I appreciate the emphasis given to NHS staff, particularly given they work with very vulnerable patients, but I was also surprised that there didn't seem to be any information for the staff in care homes, where I feel the population of care homes could be at risk if staff don't get the vaccine. Is anything being done there?
Minister.
I think the important thing to recognise that at a board level we now have local immunisation coordinators who have a role to look at particular uptake within their own board area, within segment groups, whether it be carers, those who work within the care sector as well, to encourage them to make use of the immunisation programme. And what they're doing is looking at what they can provide at a local level to increase uptake of the vaccination amongst these different groups, so that we can continue to increase the overall rate of uptake for those who are eligible for part of the vaccination programme.
Margaret MacDonald.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. This is where the tone of debate probably lowers. Is the Minister aware of the chat in any surgery that he cares to go into, where people will be saying one to the other, "Are you in for your jag?" "No, I get the flu because I got the jag." There's a commonly held belief that you do have to endure a bout of flu if you get the jag.
Minister.
Well, I'm very conscious that sometimes these types of rumours do develop. I'm informed that the vaccine is not a live vaccine, and therefore it shouldn't result in someone actually developing the flu. If I can use myself as a human guinea pig, I had the flu vaccine last week, and I don't have the flu this week.
I'm seeing nothing.